I've never been a believer in the paranormal, but that day I made an exception. I responded to a call made by an elderly lady. She reported that she kept seeing a young girl running through her yard and she was afraid of vandalism or maybe worse. On my way over, it started to pour like there's no tomorrow, lightning and thunder too. When I arrived at the residence, she pointed to where the yard was and I made my way over there. I tried to shine my flashlight along and asked, "Is anyone out here? Come on out." But nothing. All I heard was the sound of loud thunder in the back. I made my way back inside the house and the lady, now trembling in a corner, told me she's inside the house. I hear a thump in the background and I see a young girl, about 13, running from one side of the house to the other. I quickly moved towards her and asked her to stop, but then she disappears right in front of me. I thought it was my eyes playing a trick on me, but then the lady yells out, there she is, right outside." I turned towards a big window leading to the backyard, and there she was running around. But how did she get past me to exit to the back door? I immediately went outside and she had vanished, again. After I wasn't able to find anything and with no logical explanation, I told the lady the girl had run away and I wasn't able to catch her due to the weather. I asked her to calm her down. Some months later passed and I found out the elderly woman had passed away and some new people had moved into her old home. Not long after that, dispatch picked up a call from the same house. Now the new tenants reported a young girl running around in their backyard and suddenly appearing inside their house. I let someone else pick the call. I had a call to a residence for a mental evaluation or a 5150. Anyways, I get there and speak to a 50-something-year-old woman who states her 20-something-year-old son is under the influence of an unknown drug and kept repeating that he can't go in his bedroom because there was an old man hanging in his room. She stated she was too scared to go in his room and investigate it for herself because he constantly brings over friends that are drug addicts and is unsure if his claims were true or not. I then go speak to the son, who is clearly under the influence of a stimulant. He goes on to tell me that he was told by a spirit to not enter the bedroom because her father, dressed in his military class uniform, was hanging in his bedroom. I checked the room out and of course there was no body hanging in the room. As I'm in the middle of explaining to the mother that there was no body in the bedroom, a veteran officer arrives on scene to assist me. He pulls me aside and stated earlier in his career he responded to this residence. In that same bedroom, he had to investigate a suicide by hanging of an older male subject. He didn't remember all the details, so I looked it up in our report management system in my patrol car, and sure enough the officer was correct. The subject who died was a World War II veteran and had dressed in his military uniform and hung himself. I worked as a police officer in a small town in rural Nebraska. Back in the 90s, I was patrolling through town in winter. We had several abandoned houses in town, but one seemed to have the attraction of copper thieves, so we were told to keep an eye on it. Drove by it around 7 p.m. Since it sat on a corner lot, I had a clear view of all four sides of the house. As I drove around the corner, nothing looks out of the ordinary. About 2 hours later, I drive by again and the back door is wide open. I know that the back door was not open when I drove by it earlier. Looking at the snow on the ground around the house, there were no footprints. So I think, what the hell? Call dispatch, tell them I'm investigating an open door at that address and ask for a county sheriff to start my way. I walk to the open door, pull out my flashlight and shine it inside. The house has obviously been gutted for the most part. The plaster walls have been torn down, debris piles everywhere. Since there were no footprints in the snow around the door other than mine, And with all the dust on the floor not showing any footprints, I chalk it up to the wind or maybe the door just opened on its own. I was about to secure the door when I heard a loud thump come from upstairs and what sounded like kids laughing. So I enter the house and yell out, "Police department, come downstairs." More of what sounds like kids playing. I tell dispatch that it sounds like there are kids in the house and start making my way through the kitchen into the living room where the stairs are. All the while cautiously checking the main floor. 2 more times I hear something upstairs, but since I've had no response, I start thinking maybe it's an animal. Still, I hear what I'd swear was kids laughing. I head upstairs and it all gets quiet. The upstairs is relatively small with a hallway at the top of the stairs that has 1 bedroom on the right, 1 straight ahead at the end of the hall, and a bedroom on the left. As I get to the top of the stairs, I hear a thump in the bedroom to the left. I carefully peek around the door and it's an empty room with a small pile of plaster and wood debris in the middle. No kidding, sitting on top of the pile of debris was a page torn out of a child's book with a picture of a police officer on it. The hair stood up on the back of my neck. I got out of that room, quickly cleared the other rooms upstairs, and got the fuck out of there. Told dispatch nobody was in the house, locked the back door, and never went back in there again. Back when I was working as a cop on a military base, I loved working night shift. Didn't deal with 99% of the bullshit that day shift dealt with, and what little stuff we did deal with was usually really interesting. Well, most every building on a base is alarmed, and the alarms are tied right into the desk so we know the instant they go off. When we get an alarm activation, we close the base and go check the building, pull on all the doors, see if we can get in. If we can, we go into the building and secure it, check all the doors and corners to see if someone set the alarm off. Well, one night I was on patrol with my alpha partner, and we get called to respond to an alarm activation at the elementary school. So we go, secure the building, and call in that the building is all secure. No problem, keep patrolling. So about 15 to 20 minutes go by and we get another alarm activation. We get back out there and check, and now there's a maintenance door open that leads into a boiler roomish thing. Nothing in it. We close it, lock it, and get out. Another 20 minutes. And another alarm. We respond, all the doors are still locked and we can't get in, maintenance door is locked. Calling the all clear. This time my buddy and I sit on opposite sides of the school and watch to see if someone is coming and yanking the doors real hard to set the alarm off. We sit there and watch. Nothing happens, and right as we're about to leave, another alarm activation as we're sitting there. We inform the desk that we'd like the building manager on site to help us secure the interior and to let us in. This is like now 3 a.m. Building custodian shows up and we start doing a walkthrough, checking all the classrooms and checking all the maintenance rooms, and that's when we see one of the maintenance doors open with the lights on in the room. Now, this room is literally the size of a closet. We walk down there and look in, no one's in it, and that door is locked when it closes. We look in there and we find a single footprint of a bare foot made of water, left foot as a recall, of a small child. Freaked the living hell out of us because no one reported a missing child and the entire building was clear and still locked up. No one left, no one entered, and we checked every inch of that damn place, literally a 3-hour deep sweep including ceiling tiles. Freaked the ever-loving shit out of us, and to this day, my partner refuses to go into that school. I am not a police officer, but a 911 dispatcher. There was an old couple who lived on a rundown ranch house about 20 miles east of town. When the husband passed away, the woman would call 911 at least 3 times a week, asking for assistance with very mundane tasks not normally dealt to first responders. I need help turning the thermostat up, I need help boiling water for my tea, etc. The woman developed dementia, and eventually, it progressed to the point where she believed she was calling 911 to ask her deceased husband for help. All of the dispatchers would recognize the address immediately, even though all she could say was, "Husband's name, I need help. Please come home and help me." One day she called, and again was only able to repeat her husband's, I'll call him John, name. "John, I need help. Please come home and help me, John." By the time the first responders arrived on scene, they found the woman lying dead in her bed. The first unit on scene called dispatch to confirm that it was the woman herself who had called 911, as rigor mortis had already set in. We wrote it off as the fact that the heater in her house wasn't working, and the ambient temperature in the room was about 50 degrees. We continued to receive 911 calls from that woman at that address for just over a year after she passed away. Even after her home was vandalized and burned to the ground, the phone calls did not stop. "John, I need your help. John, please come home and help me." We were obligated to send a response each and every time, but not once did we find anyone on or near the property. Multiple calls to the phone company confirmed that the phone line had been disconnected, and the call was not coming from another address. I was a 911 call taker 10 years ago when I received one of the creepiest calls ever. It was freezing that night, which usually equaled a calm, quiet shift due to even the criminals not wanting to go outside. Around 3 a.m. my call box popped up green, and as usual I asked what was the emergency. A man starting frantically screaming that his still was possessed by a demon and tried to cut his heart while he slept. He had ran when the attack started and locked himself in his bathroom. I asked him a series of questions trying to figure out what the hell is going on. Every time he tried to answer, I heard what sounded like scratching and banging on the bathroom door. He whispered, "There is a demon in my sister's body. It has been battling me for days. It got free from the chains." I swear what I heard next chilled me to the core. This unearthly voice began taunting my caller through the door. It didn't sound like a 20-something woman. It was low and guttural, like she had gargled razor blades before speaking. She continued to growl and speak in a strange-sounding language until police arrived. She let out a terrifying scream when the officers broke in, then dead end. The call was over. I was shaking and had to know what happened. Even my supervisor, who had been listening to the call in real time, was pale and speechless when the line abruptly ended. Before my shift ended, the commanding officer on my creepy call called in to tell me what they found. He told me he would have nightmares for the rest of his life. Apparently, when my caller said his sister got out of her chains, he wasn't joking around. She still had a chain tied to a bloody handcuff when the officers came in. Her whole body was covered in self-inflicted scratches. Her one eye had popped a blood vessel and was bright red. Most of what she was wearing was also shredded, and her skin looked like she had been drained of her blood. She was taken in for a psych consult and, as you probably guessed, stayed there for a long time. The brother was okay except for deep gouges in his chest. His sister literally tried to dig out his heart. There was some talk about arresting the brother, but nothing ever came of it. I still can vividly remember that voice. It still makes my blood run cold. A friend's father is a police officer in one of the larger villages of Illinois. He and his partner were working night shift when they were called to investigate a suspected break-in at the local morgue. They arrived to find the custodian waiting for them out front. The The custodian said that he'd been mopping one of the corridors and had seen something move in his peripheral vision. He looked up and saw a person quickly cross from one side of the hallway to the other. He couldn't tell much about the person as he'd been turning the lights off as he worked his way through the building. Just a dim outline, but enough to be sure of what he'd seen. He was unarmed, so called the police and stepped outside to wait. My friend's dad and his partner entered the morgue. They started off by calling out to anyone who might be inside. No answer, then began to do a sweep, walking down the central corridor with hands on their guns, checking each room to the side, occasionally calling out for any intruder to show themselves. My friend's dad came upon a room with the light off, pitch black inside. He fumbled for the switch and flicked it. The room lit up, nothing but an empty waiting room for relatives of the dead. He heard his partner call out, "Hey, stop. Turn around." Friend's dad swung back out into the corridor and his partner had unholstered his gun, was pointing it at the end of the long corridor. He said, "She went around that corner." The custodian said, "She's trapped, no exits that way." They had the custodian lock himself in the waiting room for safety, then advanced down the corridor, calling out to the woman to show herself, that they wouldn't hurt her. This time my friend's dad reached the end first, and with his back to the wall, peered around the corner. The woman was standing by a big gray door. Lights were off here too, so it was hard to see her clearly. But he could see she wasn't holding a gun, had long, fair hair. He stepped out from behind the corner to talk to her, but she opened the door, disappeared into the dark inside, and shut it firmly behind her. He sprinted up to the door and pulled at the handle. Locked. Banged on it for a while and called out to her, but no answer. The door had a deadlock on it, so his partner brought over the custodian to unlock it. They turned on their flashlights to see better. The custodian rounded the corner and faltered a little. "This door? You sure? This door doesn't lock from the inside." The custodian found the right key and carefully turned it in the lock. Click. "We're coming in. Have your hands up." They entered the room, flashlights illuminating every corner. The custodian hit the light switch and the room lit up. It was empty except for some equipment against the wall and two gurneys in the middle of the room. One was empty, and one was covered in a sheet with what appeared to be a body underneath it. Nice hiding spot. My friend's dad approached and it was the smell that first spooked him. It smelled like a corpse. He pulled the sheet down and there the woman lay, straggly light brown hair all around her face. The tag on her toe said she died 4 days ago. Friend's father is a devout Christian, does not believe in ghosts or the supernatural, even now, doesn't know what to make of this event.